The rental market is in turmoil right now. A lot of people are pointing fingers at millennials, but one thing that we gotta ask ourselves, is this generation the generation to truly blame? I'm a millennial myself, so I'm a part of this whole rental boom, but is our generation to blame for skyrocketing rents? Today, what we're gonna do is break down the data, the trends, and what this actually means for the future of housing. Now, who am I? I am Orlando Hubbard. I am a real estate analyst. I literally do this all day, every day. I'm a wholesaler, pretty much. I work for a company right now, and I analyze markets. So let's take a look at what this means. As of December 2024, the typical asking rent in the U.S. hit $1,965, so $1,965, a 3.4% increase from last year. Alarmingly, single-family home rents have surged over 41% above pre-pandemic levels. So rents are skyrocketing way beyond what it was before the pandemic. Some of these cities, the increases are higher. I live in Austin, man. It's crazy out here in terms of rent. Our rent where I live, honestly, gets boosted almost every year. And I know that's pretty normal for people who buy multifamily or who are multifamily owners, but as we're seeing in a lot of the housing markets and a lot of the housing crisis, America is in a housing crisis in general, just because, we don't have enough homes, and we already don't have enough homes. And then the homes that we do have are so expensive that nobody can afford them. But why? Let's look at some driving forces that are causing things to change. So millennials, we're typically between 29 and 43. Like, most of us make up like a massive share of renters here in America. We're gonna be the biggest generation after the boomer generation. Our behaviors, our financial situations, our life preferences, all of that is shaping the market right now. Let's look at how. So one thing is, I got some points here that I like to look at: urban to suburban shift. So remote work, we're one of the first generations that have really embraced remote work and really have gone into remote work, where it's been something that's benefited us, as well as something that is that we're used to. But it's caused a lot of us to move away from expensive cities, but instead of buying homes, what we do is just rent. We rent. Honestly, when I first got here, I rented. It was a single family home. It was actually just a room in a suburban area. So that pushes up demand and the prices. And then also delayed home ownership. Honestly, with a lot of student debt, you got a lot of people that are still paying off debt. Home prices, mortgage rates are pretty high. We can't afford to actually put down payments on houses right now. It's extremely expensive. And then it's also the single family rental boom. A lot of millennials prefer extra space over an apartment. This extra space of a house over an apartment. So even though, and this is just something to think about, a lot of houses, man, you might as well rent a house versus an apartment with how expensive apartments are. And a lot of us are wanting to have much more space if we're gonna pay the same amount that we would for a small apartment as we would for a house. And it honestly just makes sense. So this trend pretty much has put massive pressure on the single family rental market, so that drives rents obviously higher. Now, it's not just about our preferences, millennials' preferences. Broader economic trends are making rent more expensive for everybody. So the first one is obviously higher mortgage rates. Yes, the higher the mortgage rates are, obviously the less people are going to be interested in buying. And even the less people who would sell, where would they go? They already locked into a 2-3% interest rate. Why would they go and sell their house and then get a 7% interest rate? Many of would-be home buyers are priced out of ownership due to mortgage rates hovering above 7%. That means more people are forced to rent instead of buy, obviously. And then housing supply shortage. That's something that I just mentioned earlier. The U.S. is about 3.7 million housing units short. Fewer available homes means landlords can keep raising prices. We don't have enough homes already. And then the homes that we do have are pretty expensive in terms of us people wanting to buy houses, because you got high mortgage rates and people don't want to buy and they want to rent instead. And now that puts the landlord in a position to be just continue to collect rents and raise rents, because it's like, where are you going to go? And then the third thing is institutional investors. I'm one that is always not interested in blaming institutional investors for a lot of things, just because You know, at the end of the day, business is business, period. Like, that's just how I look at it. But large corporations do buy single family homes. I know BlackRock has become, I believe, the largest single family homeowner in, as far as like institutional investors in America. At some point, the pendulum will swing and they'll start dumping their inventory as well. Now, the rent crisis isn't hitting the same city everywhere, though. I will say that some of the biggest year-over-year rent increases include Hartford, Connecticut. The East Coast is always a little bit more expensive, so they were looking at about 7.9% increases. Cleveland, Ohio is just a great and growing state in terms of a rental market. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, all these places that are usually like, they're great rental markets, honestly. If you really like I said, I do this all day, every day, pretty much 8 hours a day, look at markets and, you know, see what's out there. Sellers call us and they want to sell their houses. And you just look at the market and see what's selling and how things are selling. And man, honestly, you'd be surprised at some of these markets that are really, really flourishing and actually doing really well. Cleveland is one of them. Like I said, Cincinnati is one of them. So that's a given. That makes sense. That 7% increase year over year is. Richmond, Virginia is one that honestly surprised me, but they've grown 6.5%. What happens when this continues to happen? Prices continue to rise. Rents continue to rise. The effects usually go beyond just housing. You get an affordability crisis. Many Americans, they're now spending over 30% of their income on rent. I know for us, we pretty much do. We probably spend, close to over 30% of our income on rent, just because it really is so expensive. So that puts a financial strain on a lot of people. Obviously, delayed milestones, high rent costs force millennials to delay marriage, having kids. Most people don't want to have kids when they don't have homes or, all their ducks pretty much in a row. And then obviously the wider economic impacts. With so much income going toward rent, people have less to spend on other goods and services, which could slow economic growth. Now, how can we fix the rental market crisis? So this is going to require some action, obviously, on multiple fronts. We need to build more housing. That's a given. So we obviously need policies that encourage developers to build more affordable housing, especially single family homes. And then we also need incentives for home buyers, programs that make home ownership more accessible. Now, I know there's some out there. I believe my wife was actually looking into some. It's not as feasible as it should be or as widespread as it should be. Stronger rent protections. Some cities are implementing rent control measures, but these policies come with their own controversies. Are we really to blame? Are millennials the real ones to blame for the rental markets? You decide.